have the ability to produce fertilizers or what? So we are going to be hearing some of that, and I challenge us to think through how we can be part of that market. Tomorrow we'll be talking about nutrition in the morning. In the afternoon we'll be talking about trade and how we can get the Africa Free Continental Trade to work. We have so much people. We have so much in our midst. Let's talk about how that potential can eventually work for this continent. On Thursday, we talk about leadership and leading for transformation of Africa's food systems. We will have ministers, over 38 ministers from 23 countries, talking about how they can transform their food systems. We'll see former leaders that have been part of transforming Africa look back, but also advise on how we can continue moving forward in what we are calling the Council of the Wise. Heads of state and leaders of industry will be having these conversations. And we'll end the day with heads of state, sitting heads of state today, taking on the challenge of food systems transformation. The real stake here is, what is at stake here is, if we don't do the right thing between now and the next few years, we will be the largest hungry continent, probably the only hungry continent by 2050. And who wants to be that? Who wants to be there with all the potential that Nadine was talking about? On the last day, Friday, we'll be talking about the road to COP28. COP28 and the road to COP28 is so important. I grew up on a farm. The most important thing for a farmer is to be able to send their kids to school, never mind feeding them. When we take that ability for farmers to take their kids to school, to feed them, we are impacting the core of the African continent. And that's what climate change is doing to us. So we must care about what is happening in COP28. And that's why we have a whole conversation on Friday on what's happening in COP28. Here in our midst, we have a number of things: the Farmers Forum, the Youth Forum. Join them. The women, yesterday we celebrated women that are doing, young women that are doing businesses across the continent. Join all these events and make sure that in everything we are talking about action and getting things done. We are not talking about problems and potential. We already know enough of that. So thank you so much for being part of this. And we at AGRA and the Africa Food Systems Forum are extremely grateful to the AGRF partners. We have a group of partners, nearly 30 partners now, that have contributed to this forum. And we're extremely grateful to the effort that you put into making this happen. So thank you so much, Your Excellency, for giving us the opportunity. And we look forward to a fantastic and good week in Dar es Salaam. Thank you again.
You are now about to hear from two ministers. The first minister I will introduce. The second minister I'm not important enough to introduce. But the first minister will introduce the second minister. It is so good to have you, Excellency, Suleiman Masood Makame. He's the Minister of the Blue Economy and Fisheries, Zanzibar, United Republic of Tanzania. Please join me here at the lectern. You're very welcome. It is going to take the Minister 20 seconds to get to the stage. I know you have 20 seconds of applause left in you. Maybe 25.
Your Excellency, Dr. Philip Isidore Mpango, Vice President of the United Republic of Tanzania, honorable ministers present here today, permanent and principal secretaries, directors, distinguished guests, colleagues, development partners, esteemed participants, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed. Your Excellency, it is a great honor for me today to have this opportunity to stand here in this great gathering of people at the opening ceremony of the Africa Food System Forum 2023. We thank you, Your Excellency, for gracing the occasion on behalf of our country, United Republic of Tanzania. We do hereby salute Her Excellency Dr. Samia Suluhu Hassan, the President of the United Republic of Tanzania, for her leadership in ensuring the success of this a very important forum today. Your Excellency, please now allow me to appreciate with the gratitude the guidance of our President of Zanzibar and the Chairman of Revolutionary Council, Dr. Hussein Ali Mwinyi, and his support in ensuring full participation on behalf of the Revolutionary Government of Zanzibar. Your Excellency, innovation and transformation of food security and food system requires our readiness to address the critical parameters that are key to strengthening our sustainable development goals. We must balance between our development objectives and environmental conservation. We must also be united in tackling the impact of climate changes we are facing now globally. We should not lose sight of the fact that more investments are needed in promoting smart knowledge and innovation in food system. Your Excellency, no solution of food system can be effective without availability of water and healthy soil. The same goes to the need to protect our marine environment and biodiversity. Digital transformation and technological advancement are key to address climate-smart solutions in agriculture and fisheries. We must work together to preserve biodiversity while maximizing productivity. We must respect ecosystem services while ensuring circular economy, social inclusion, equity, and gender-sensitive intervention processes. Your Excellency, may I please conclude by adding that all these priorities require strong, vibrant, and concrete policies derived by underscoring the importance of embracing a holistic approach in addressing all these critical parameters for sustainable and resilient food system for current and future generation. Thank you very much for your attention. Kazi iendelee.
Thank you so much, Minister. I have been promoted. I am now important enough to introduce the Minister of Agriculture for the United Republic of Tanzania. Please join me here on stage. Honorable Hussein Mohammed Basha, thank you very much. I know you've been here from the very beginning of our opening plenary ceremony. We thank you for your time.
Thank you. Your Excellency, the Vice President of the United Republic of Tanzania, Dr. Isidori Philip Mpango, Your Excellencies, former heads of state, ministers present, farmers, development partners, and other delegate youth and women of Africa. Your Excellency, first of all, I thank God for giving us this opportunity to meet here in Dar es Salaam to attend this important event of the African Food System 2023. Let me take this opportunity to thank the AGRF Secretariat and the leadership of Dr. Agnes Kalibata, the President of AGRA, for cooperation we got as a government on the preparation of this event. Allow me to express my sincere thanks to you, Your Excellency Vice President, and Her Excellency Dr. Samia Suluhu Hassan, the President of the United Republic of Tanzania, for high political will in making this forum happen. With your consent, I would like to extend my appreciation to all delegates for taking their time to attend this summit. We are meeting today here in Dar es Salaam in Tanzania after Dakar Summit, after last year post-COVID AGRF in Kigali. We are meeting today after Dakar Summit, where we discussed about food sovereignty, Africa food system transformation, resilience of the African economy and the global economy for sustainable development. We can only attain that if we put youth and women at the center of this. Your Excellency, my sincere appreciation also goes to the AGRF Secretariat, as I said, and the member of Longo Organizing Committee, public and private sector who work tirelessly to make this event possible. Your Excellency, the world is discussing about food security. The world is projecting 9 billion people in the near future. The world is threatened by the environment challenge. Africa is the youngest continent with an average age of 20 years old. Africa has over 65% land which has not been utilized. The future and the sustainability of the world will only happen if the African continent and African leaders play a greater role to complement each other instead of competing each other for the utilization of the available resources. Your Excellency, Vice President, let me take this opportunity now, invite you to deliver your speech to this audience attending this summit, both who are physically present here today and those who are participating online. Karibu sana.
You may be seated, please. Excellencies, former heads of state and government, honorable ministers, senior government officials, private sector leaders and farmers, Dr. Agnes Kalibata, the President of AGRA, Excellencies, ambassadors and members of the diplomatic corps, heads and representatives of international organizations, representatives of Africa's youth, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great honor and privilege to officiate this opening ceremony of the Africa Food Systems Forum 2023. On behalf of Her Excellency, Dr. Samia Suluhu Hassan, the President of the United Republic of Tanzania, I warmly welcome all delegates, both international guests who have traveled all the way to Dar es Salaam, and all those who are following the proceedings virtually. A special welcome to all farmers, who are Africa's breadwinners and bearers of regional and global food security, as well as food price stability. Karibuni sana, you are most welcome. Excellencies, delegates, ladies and gentlemen, Tanzania is privileged to host this historic summit for the second time. The first time was from 26th to 28th September 2012. And on that note, I thank AGRF Secretariat and their partners for availing us another opportunity and for collaborating with the government of the United Republic of Tanzania in making this summit a reality. The attendance is quite impressive, with an estimated number of over 5,000 from over 70 countries. The content of the summit looks robust, with the program lining up over 350 renowned speakers and practitioners on various topical issues on regional and global food systems. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, safe and nutritious food is among the most basic and universal rights of all humans for survival and well-being. It does not matter how rich or poor we are, whether young or old, male or female. Each one of us equally needs and is divinely entitled to quality food. Nevertheless, with multiple global crises of biodiversity loss, climate change and desertification, the COVID-19 pandemic, and the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war, the right to food has been denied to about a quarter of Africa's population. According to the State of Food Security and Nutrition Report of July 2023, 1 in 5 people in Africa is going hungry. That is more than twice the global average. The number of people experiencing hunger is projected to rise by more than 22 million in 2023, with food import bills in the region estimated at $75 billion. Such a looming food deficit, coupled with rising import bills and a wide range of nutritional challenges, undermines regional output growth and our drive towards Agenda 2063, the Africa we want. This summit, under the theme Recover, Regenerate, Act, Africa's Solutions to Food Systems Transformation, is a veritable test of our individual and collective resolve to go beyond lofty words and translate them into urgent, concrete actions to foster food systems transformation, capitalizing on our vast land resources, demographic dividend, and a strong, dynamic force of African women. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the United Republic of Tanzania appreciates food systems transformation initiatives and is committed to coalitions and partnerships such as AGRF. Our key objectives include realizing SDG 2 and scaling up our potential as a regional and global food granary. And in that regard, food systems transformation has remained a top development agenda, and we have registered several milestones, and I want to spell out a few examples. First, agriculture in Tanzania is recognized as an engine of inclusive growth and a mainstay of the economy. It employs about 65% of the population with GDP shares of 27% and 21% for Tanzania mainland and Zanzibar respectively, growing at about 5% annually. The sector contributes about 30% of the total export earnings and supplies 65% of all industrial raw materials in the country. Second, the government has scaled up the budget for agriculture by about 70% over the last 2 years, from $120 million in 2021-22 to $397 million in 2023-24, and we have done that in order to catalyze agriculture and food systems transformation. The increased budget is aimed at transforming agriculture into commercial agriculture and increase the crop subsector growth to 10% by 2030 from the current 5.4%. The initiative also aims at improving extension services and increasing investment in the sector, as well as motivating youth participation in agribusiness through establishing block irrigation farming under what we call as the Building a Better Tomorrow Youth Initiative for Agribusiness. And one of the successful cases in this regard is the Youth Agribusiness Incubation Center called Sokoine University Graduate Entrepreneur Cooperative, or in short, SUGECO. The livestock subsector, Building Better Tomorrow Live, is also being established for beef production and aquaculture. And quite impressive results are already being realized. Tanzania is also leveraging digital technologies for planning, monitoring and evaluation, extension services, marketing, payment systems, and business support services. Third, Tanzania has put in place policies and strategies supportive of food systems. As a result of implementation of fairly robust policies and strategies, Tanzania has had food self-sufficiency ratios of above 100% for over 2 decades. We in Tanzania have also introduced low-cost and long-term agricultural financing to the private sector, including establishment of a facility at the central bank that enables commercial banks to borrow for onward lending to farmers at single-digit interest rate. We have also recapitalized the Tanzania Agricultural Development Bank and contributing to growth in agriculture financing. Fourth, cognizance of the challenges emanating from climate change, Tanzania has embraced climate-smart agriculture, including regenerative production systems, that is, soil health technologies, use of less on-farm inputs like agrochemicals and fertilizers, while promoting judicious use of off-farm inputs. We have also embarked on using inclusive green growth tools, which is a framework for capacity building and measuring the levels of compliance for small, medium, and large-scale producers, as well as processors and agribusinesses. And in developing the tools, Tanzania collaborates with local NGOs and international organizations such as the World Wildlife Fund, CARE International, the Nature Conservancy, and the International Union for Conservation of Nature. This is largely championed under the Southern Agricultural Corridor of Tanzania, SAGCOT. Fifth, we have also scaled up investment in agriculture research and education, and this involves working closely with universities and agricultural research institutions to develop advanced farming techniques, pesticides, high-yield seeds, promoting agribusinesses, and encouraging the youth to take interest in agriculture. We are also leveraging PPPs, especially in construction of irrigation schemes, provision of extension services, training and retooling of extension staff, as well as promotion of farmer-to-farmer learning. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, despite the successes highlighted, there are still some unresolved challenges, especially low production and productivity. Furthermore, like many other countries, Tanzania remains vulnerable to adverse effects of climate change, pest outbreaks, and soil degradation. Other challenges include limited access to right technologies, underfunding of scientific research, and limited value addition. Inadequate financing of food value chains is also still a major constraint, mainly due to high cost of borrowing for the agriculture sector. And additionally, women and youth tend to be the most financially excluded segments of the population. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, it is my firm conviction that such challenges can and must be resolved with transformative ideas from this summit. Allow me to lay out just 4 areas for your consideration in subsequent discussions. First, on the supply side, I think Africa needs to harness existing scientific knowledge, including indigenous technology, to produce and process enough food for its people and for the global markets. And therefore, African governments should take requisite measures to provide small-scale farmers with affordable inputs, knowledge, skills, and finance to enhance productivity along food value chains. We also need to scale up digitalization and financing of scientific research. We must also appreciate that our youth and women are central to our food systems and need to harness their growing numbers and ensure they benefit from their sweat and innovativeness. In particular, we should endeavor to make agriculture enticing to the younger generation through the use of modern technology, easy access to land, startup capital, and markets, particularly targeting activities like horticulture, which pay off relatively quickly. Second, I think there is need to put an end to exploitative practices to the farmers by enforcing the use of standard weights and measures, as well as banning forward market practices in order to protect the farmers. And in Tanzania, we have successfully overcome such malpractices in a number of value chains such as meat and rice and beans, but we still need to extend it to other agro-produce. Third, food systems transformation needs a multi-sectoral development approach, including easing supply chains and movement of food commodities. I therefore urge African countries to honor the regional trade arrangements, and in particular, the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, by complying with trade protocols and removing non-tariff barriers. The growth of our private sector and its success in the regional and global markets hinge on how supportive our policies are. And lastly, peace and security are important prerequisites for functioning food systems. Millions of displaced people and refugees in Africa and in the world have had their lives and food production capacities disrupted. These are farmers and livestock keepers who used to be self-reliant, but because of wars and conflicts, they suffer the indignity of depending on the generosity and goodwill of others. And this must stop. We should embrace peaceful ways of resolving conflicts and ensure peace and security prevail in our continent and other parts of the world. Ladies and gentlemen, with these remarks, I now have the honor and pleasure to announce that the Africa Food Systems Summit, the 2023 summit, is officially opened, and I'm now ready to proceed with the launching of the 2023 Africa Agricultural Status Report. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for bringing the fanfare to the Africa's Food Systems Forum. I'm going to ask you and Dr. Kalibata to come onto the stage so that we can officially launch the Africa Agriculture Status Report. If you come center stage, we are going to cue the countdown.
Get ready to take a thrilling voyage as we rewind through the pages of Africa's Agriculture Status Report, spanning years of groundbreaking insights and discoveries. Comes the 2023 Africa's Agriculture Status Report.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Thank you, Honourable Ministers. Thank you, delegates online and in the room. We appreciate you. One more job to do before we move on to the deal-making room. Your Excellency, do you think you could come back on stage for a photo call with your ministers and Dr. Kalibata, so we have a big one with all of the speakers as well? If you come back on stage so that we can have the photograph. It's like a class photograph for the end of this session. Is that possible, Dr. Kalibata? Let's do that. A big class photograph. All right, very good. Dr. Kalibata, Your Excellencies, Minister Makame, Minister Bashir, speakers here on the stage, for our closing photograph. Thank you so much. This is how we officially open Africa's Food Systems Forum with a great class photograph. Before we head on to the rest of our program, photographers flash away. That is totally acceptable and appropriate at this stage. If you're watching online, do stay with us for the opening of the deal room. That will open momentarily. Ministers Bashir, Ministers Makame, don't be shy. Speakers who have been on the stage in the last 2 hours, please, quickly, on stage. Nadine, get your panelists on stage. Very good. Faster than that, if that is possible. Very good. Lovely to see you all. Doctors, honourable speakers, only if you have been on stage in the last 2 hours. Very good. Excellent. This is a beautiful photograph. We will remember this for the rest of 2023. Thank you. Thank you so much to all of the speakers, for the panelists, for the presenters, for the keynotes. Ambassador Ferrero, please come to the front. We appreciate you. You started us off this morning. For the delegates watching online, thank you. I have actually been asked, how can my colleagues watch online you have to go to the agrf.org website, register as a virtual delegate, and that's how you can watch and participate online. Speakers, honourable guests, Your Excellency Dr. Kalibata, thank you so much for taking part in this big class photograph. Your Excellency, thank you for officially starting Africa's Food Systems Forum 2023, the largest ever in history. Speakers, Your Excellency, thank you. You may exit the stage. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, photographers. Appreciate you. Thank you, speakers. We're going to clear the stage.
Vice President and members of the Board of Agra. Okay.
In 1 minute's time, I am going to be opening the deal room. I will be handing over to my colleague, Sam Kimera. Have we finished with the photographs? Excellencies, Dr. Kalibata, photographers. Very good. Thank you all. Members of the Board of Agra. Members of the Board of Agra, please join me on stage. And Dr. Kalibata and His Excellency, the Vice President of the Republic of Tanzania. Agra Board members, you have 30 seconds, and then we are wrapping up this official opening ceremony. Thank you so much. All right, very good. Your Excellency, thank you very much, Dr. Kalibata. Aha, our photograph is getting a little bigger. Appreciate you. This is the main plenary room for the Africa Food Systems Forum. I'm going to be handing over to my colleague Sam Kimera in just a moment. We will wait for the Vice President to finish. We will be upstanding for when he leaves. Thank you, Agra Board members. Thank you. And then we will continue with our program. Thank you, Your Excellency. Thank you, Honourable Ministers, for joining us today. Delegates, if you are sitting on the ground floor, I just want you to look up to the balcony because that was live music. Just have a look up and please applause our musicians. Thank you. You are beautiful. And now I pass on to my colleague, Sam Kimera, who is going to be opening the deal room, one of the most innovative, exciting places to be during the African Food Systems Forum. Thank you for your attention. Sam, the mic is yours.
Good morning one more time. I'd like to afford you 30 seconds if you could kindly take your seat. All right then. Good morning one more time. Kindly respond to my kind greeting. Good morning. Good. So we have volume a little bit louder. Good morning. Okay, that's better. One more time now, this kind of volume. Good morning. Okay, very good. I'm going to pick up off of where Femi stopped. And I'd like to split the room into 4 sections. So we have 1, we have 2 in the middle, 3 on my side, and 4 at the top. I have seen you stand, I have seen you sit, I have seen you clap, but what I really want to hear is your voices. So over this way, kindly repeat as I give you an instruction. Repeat after me. Hello. Yeah. Come on, come on. Let me make it a bit more difficult. Everyone, hello. Very good. Second section. Hello. In the middle, a bit louder. You can do it. Hello. Okay, there's 2 or 3 people. And over to this side. Hello. There's like a voice in the background there. It's just over there. Let's try it one more time. Over this way. Hello. Nice. In the middle. Hello. Thank you. And over the end. Hello. Okay, now at the top, you're the last one, so give me the best one you can. Everyone. Hello. Yes. One more time. At the top, everyone. 1, 2, 3, go. Hello. Very good. Thank you for being here. My responsibility will be to keep us moving, and we are going to the section where we're looking at the deal room opening. 3 key messages that I need you to keep mind over. Our session is going to be about accelerating investments to transform our food systems for a sustainable future. 3 key things I'd like you to mind and to just write down, take a quick note. 1 is to do with the urgent action we need to be taking. It's important for us to invest in this. And coming out of the wake of COVID and the situation in Ukraine and so many other factors, it's important that we keep investing. Second, when we say investment, it's not to throw money at problems, but to figure out how we can set up systems, infrastructure, and models that advance the food systems. And third is the question of inclusivity investment models. So the opportunity for women and for youth. Today we have a great panel, and they're ready for us. All right? I'd like us to move to inviting. Our panel will be here in just a second. But before we do that, to open, if I may have your attention, ladies and gentlemen. Much better. Thank you. I know some pictures are still taking, but I want us to keep moving. To get us to the deal room opening, first and foremost, I would like to have an honorable member come to the front, and his name is a special one. I'll read his title and give you his name. We're going to have the Minister of State, President's Office, Planning and Investment for the United Republic of Tanzania, Honorable Professor Kitila Mkumbo, who'll be giving us opening remarks and to launch the deal room. A round of applause, please. Honorable Professor, I welcome you to the stage.
I don't have to go through all this protocol. I don't think these people are here.
Just opening up 10 minutes.
Okay. Right.
Right.
You are excellent.
Okay. Sorry, let me get the room quiet.
Yeah, because I don't think it is ready here.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to invite us to honor our honorable speaker with your attention. If you could kindly allow me, if you are standing in the aisle, I am kindly requesting you to take a seat. If you are having a discussion with the person next to you, I'm kindly inviting you to respect and honor the honorable speaker, who will be opening with some remarks. Thank you so much. Very good to see you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Again, thank you. Honorable, please.
Your Excellency, former President of the United Republic of Tanzania, His Excellency Jakaya Mrisho Kikwete, honorable ministers, leaders of various private sector organizations, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I want to begin by thanking the organizers for inviting me to participate in this great forum and for giving me the privilege to officiate at the opening session of this platform, which focuses on striking new deals and commitments in the agriculture and agribusiness sectors through facilitating access to finance, mentorship, and market entry solutions to support the economic growth. It is a premier platform that promises to move the African agriculture and food systems agenda beyond food security onto agri-food investment. Let me also highlight a little bit the potential the agriculture sector can play, or that is playing, in Tanzanian economic transformation. As highlighted by the guest of honor this morning, the agricultural products in this country, as in many other African countries, characterize both the imports and the exports. For example, in many African countries, including Tanzania, the edible oils and sugar imports are among the top 5 imports, which in this country are valued at more than 1 billion USD. Similarly, along minerals, agricultural raw materials are among the top exports for Tanzania. Both scenarios evidently suggest that investing in agriculture and agro-processing potentially offers big business in Tanzania and in Africa. And it is on this basis that we invite potential investors and businesses attending this forum to seriously consider Tanzania as their destination for agriculture and agro-business. Dear delegates, ladies and gentlemen, Her Excellency Dr. Samia Suluhu Hassan, the President of the United Republic of Tanzania, is championing large economic, political errors, which is translated into reconciliation. Economic reforms are being guided by the opening up approach, which basically translates into welcoming outside investors and their technical assistance, as well as stimulating and facilitating domestic investment. Several structural and legal reforms have been and are being undertaken to ensure that the business environment is conducive and facilitates to investors. The recent study by the Deloitte Africa Investment Attractive Index ranks Tanzania among the top 10 attractive locations to invest in Africa. Dear delegates, ladies and gentlemen, food insecurity is real, just like the effect of the climate change. It is projected that almost 6 million people will be chronically undernourished by 2030. Worldwide, food insecurity affects particularly women and people living in rural areas. Moderate or severe food insecurity affected already 33.3% of adults living in rural areas in 2022, compared to only 28.8% in pre-urban areas. The gender gap in food insecurity at the global level, which had widened the wake of the pandemic, narrowed from 3.8 percentage points in 2022 to 2.4% last year. More than 3.1 billion people in the world, or 42% for that matter, were unable to afford a healthy diet in 2021. Ladies and gentlemen, despite these challenges, Africa is well placed to offer the global solution to the challenge of food security. For example, due to its agroecological diversity, abundant natural resources, and a rich agricultural heritage, Tanzania is a good example that offers the potential for diverse food systems entailing crops, livestock, and fisheries. Nevertheless, for this to be realized, significant investment will be needed. As I end, ladies and gentlemen, global challenges require global solutions. Food insecurity is a global challenge that requires global solution. As I said earlier, this global forum offers a platform to interrogate the global challenges and provide innovative solutions to ensure that through smart food systems, food security and agribusiness are realized. The forum has set very ambitious goals that cannot be achieved without global solidarity, shared knowledge, and collaborative action. Tanzania is ready to play its rightful place in this regard. Africa can and should fill the world. We have the potential. Let this forum realize that potential through partnerships and investments to ensure that in this globe, no one goes hungry, and through agribusiness, the African economies are transformed and people's lives improved. It is possible. Let us play our part. Thank you very much for listening. I declare that this steel room is now officially opened. Asanteni sana.
Thank you so much, Honorable Professor. Another round of applause for our Honorable Professor. Indeed, global challenges require global solutions. And right now we'd like to move to our panel of distinguished gentlemen and ladies. We are going to have a panel discussion. And the panel discussion will be looking at the question, what will it take to double the number of businesses in food systems? At this point, I'd like to invite our panelists, starting with Partner and Investment Director, Pearl Capital Partners, Mr. Wanjohi Ndagu. Please come to the stage. I'd like to invite Deputy Vice President for Sector Operations, Millennium Challenge Corporation, Ms. Katerina Ntep. And as they come, please do help me give them an applause. Yes, thank you. Yes. Senior Vice President of Africa Programs, Haifa International, Ms. Adesua Ifedi. Thank you, Vera. Very good. Group CEO, Afex, Mr. Ayodeji Balogun. There you are. Very good to see you. SVP Venture 37, Land O'Lakes, USA, Mr. John Ellenberger. Chief Strategy Officer, Equity Group, Mr. Brent Malahai. A big round of applause, please. All right, then. Without any further ado, I would like to... Yes, please, kindly. I'll stay up here and I'll pass it to you. Without any further ado, if I could just hear from every one of you, one at a time, starting from Mr. Brent. What is your why? Why is it so important that we focus on doubling the number of businesses in this field and in this sector? Very briefly, if you may.
So maybe to do that, let me leave you with 3 statistics, a plan, and an invitation. So let me start my introduction with 3 statistics. 3%, 8%, and 25%. 3% is the portion of Africa's wealth represented by the GDP. 8% is the food net of any exports that Africa has. And as discussed earlier in the past presentations, 25% is essentially the 2.4 billion population of Africa by 2050. The why is we need to equalize those statistics, the 3, the 25%, and there lies the opportunity for businesses to more than double. Thank you.
Very good. We'll go that. Yes, thank you.
Thank you for the question. I would say my why is that the private sector has the unique ability to help to contribute to the kind of advances that we're talking about throughout this AGRF session, and feel that it's very important that the private sector be included.
Africa will have 1 million more mouths to feed. And the question is, how will Africa feed itself? Today, government budgets are less than 5% of the size of the sector. Total credit is about 2% of the size of the sector. So the only solution is by creating and empowering African champions, African businesses that can drive the food transformation.
Very good. I should say I appreciate how succinct you are, strong points, and they are very important. Yes, please.
And I will say that we need to identify our pull factor. The pull factors are the entrepreneurs working across the bottleneck to speak investment language and make investment ready as a sector.
Very good. Madam Catherine?
Good morning. My why is, representing a development partner, is that we need to bring holistic solutions that integrate infrastructure policies, inclusive growth, with a focus on climate and opportunities for youth and women. Thank you.
Right. And lastly, Mr. Ndagu? If you could kindly, I think, press the button. There you go. Thank you.
Thank you. Morning. What probably we need to do is that we need to make sure that agriculture is economically viable, especially for the producer. I do think, in terms of the entire value chain, that is where, Sub-Saharan Africa is weakest at. And the challenge comes from, the farmer asking themselves, why do I need to plant a single seed over and above?
Very good. Thank you so much for that contribution. But let me stay with Mr. Wanjohi. To navigate the dynamic landscape of fostering growth within the food industry, we have to consider key strategies. From your opinion and experience, what key strategies and initiatives do you?
Yes, thank you. As I mentioned, the agriculture sector operates in a very environment. So for a producer, the question is, why should I invest in, better, yielding seed varieties? Why do I need to invest in better animal genetics? Because they do have a challenge of, an effective market. Will my produce find a market? Will I get a fair price? And will I get paid? So we do need to make a lot more investment on the demand side, which means how do we improve the infrastructure for the produce to get from the farm to the market? How do we ensure that we have proper trade policies that protect the farmer? We have very many cases of where we have bulk production, but then at the same time you experience an inflow of huge amount of imports, and it's very discouraging. And not just discouraging for the producer at that point in time, it makes them lose hope. A farmer thinks just like any other investor, I need to have a long-term perspective. I need to invest knowing that I will make a return even 5 years down the line. So we need to make sure that we do all we can to make sure that the producer is getting a fair share of the value in the value chain.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'll keep with Ms. Katerina Ntep. With the commitment to fostering, now this conversation has been a lot on inclusivity and gender equality. How would you say is MCC driving women's participation? I know it's a key one, especially through policy support and strategic investments. Would you speak into that?
Thank you. So in its 20-year existence, MCC has invested a total of $20 billion, of which $5 billion have been for agricultural development.
Could we a round of applause for that? Yes, thank you. Thank you so much.
In roads, irrigation, post-harvest infrastructure, agribusiness, farmer support. But we very much look for opportunities for inclusive growth. And so let me just give a few examples. We have a current program in Lesotho where we're introducing irrigated horticulture. But in order for women to be able to benefit from it, in working with our partners in the Lesotho government, we encourage them to adopt certain legal changes. And so they were able to pass a new inheritance law and also a law to harmonize traditional law with statutory law to allow women to benefit from owning some of this irrigated land and being able to inherit it, but also pass it on to their heirs. So I think that's an example of some policy changes that help to support women's participation. And it's about gender inclusion, but also inclusion for smallholder farmers. So another example I'll give is in the program that we're going to be doing with Mozambique. We're undertaking a pilot tax policy reform so that smallholder farmers can be brought into the formal market, thereby raising their revenue and increasing investor certainty in the agricultural sector. So thank you.
Very good. If I may stay with you a little, especially on the subject of inclusivity, especially for women, would you speak to MCC's involvement in making sure that women have decision-making ability, that they're included, that they have say over what happens in this sector?
So I talked about some of the policy reforms at the macro level, but also at the project level. For example, when we're introducing an irrigated perimeter, it's important for women to have a voice, for example, in the water users associations or the farmers cooperatives, so that they can participate in, as officers of those associations, so that they have a greater voice in what happens at the local level.
Very good. Thank you so much. A round of applause for Ms. Katerina. And at this point, I'll turn my attention to Mr. Adesua Ifedi. The goal to double the number of businesses, we've already spoken a little bit about that, especially within food systems, but we know it's ambitious. It's a big challenge and it's a global solution. It's ambitious. Can you provide some insights into how Heifer International envisions contributing towards this very ambitious goal?
Yeah, thank you. I just want to add my voice to what the previous speaker said. I think there's been so much work that's gone into the continent's agriculture sector by everybody, and it actually takes all of that diverse lens and collaborative effort for us to see the results that we can leverage on today. Heifer International focuses on ending hunger and poverty. The statistics shows that there are over almost 500 million smallholder farmers across the world, and they represent 80% or more of the farms in the world as a whole. Now compare that to the fact that 50% of the world hungry are smallholder farmers. In Africa, that goes up to 3/4. So if we tackle the issue of agriculture and we tackle it at the smallholder farmer level, we are definitely going to transform not just the hunger challenge, but also the continental challenge of being able to feed itself. But with all of the efforts that we're doing, as we begin to think of investments, without funding, we cannot continue to make this work. And we also know that there are lots of bottlenecks. A number of them have been mentioned. The impact of climate, inaccessibility of insurance to reduce risk so that the sector is investable, and so many other things. But what we are beginning to learn in Heifer, having worked at farm level for so long, is that there are also innovators in the continent who are close to this challenge and are coming up with ideas to address those bottlenecks. And it really takes all of us working in this way to get the work done. Well, how are we thinking as Heifer to double the amount of businesses? We are considering the pull factor. We believe that there are strategic businesses that are growing within the sector that are addressing bottlenecks for smallholder farmers, but creating jobs for young people and introducing new people into the sector, making the sector more attractive, more profitable, and more investor-ready. These are critical businesses that we want to focus our attention on. And when you look at the numbers, they are also proving that we are working. We're not Silicon Valley yet, but Africa in the last 10 years has attracted a lot of investment to the tech sector. Unfortunately, most of it goes to fintech. Not unfortunately, that's great because we have to settle finance first, right? But less than 20% or 10 is coming to agtech. But the dynamics are changing. 1% came into Africa in 2020. In 2021, almost $500 million was raised in agtech. And by 2022 half year, we're already doing the same numbers we did in the whole year. What does that tell us? That there is obviously evidence that the work in agtech is significant to the transformation. And so for us in Heifer, we are beginning to see what we are doing at the community level with the farmers, addressing the works at the co-op level, but also identifying the strategic role of these trigger businesses that we consider to be a pull factor, to be sure that we are supporting them to become investor ready.
Very good. Thank you so much. Yes, you can go ahead and clap if you appreciate that response. Very good. Just to remind you, on our panel, we have leading practitioners and they're representing different institutional voices. And this discussion is about how we're evolving in terms of investor strategies. Next in line, in terms of the questions, I would like to have a response to our audience. Mr. Ayodeji, would you speak to the role of facilitators in providing access to markets? You seem to be experiencing quite a bit of success. Would you speak to us about that?
Thank you very much. So one of my greatest quotes in agriculture is market is the best fertilizer. Think about it. We think to drive up productivity, the farmer needs fertilizer. But when he has fertilizer and it produces the grain, if you go with the Bible says a multiple of 10 and a multiple of 100, right? So he has his grains and he has his harvest. Where is the cash flow going to come from? And then if you think about that, 60-70% of farmers actually need credits to be able to buy the fertilizer, the seeds, the chemicals they need. But when there is no assurance of the cash flow, we all do business. You produce, you create value, you sell, and you earn cash. And that comes when you have access to markets. So when you give assurance of a farmer that he has access to markets, first you incentivize him to produce more. It encourages him to invest more of his income in the year for the next planting season. Second, you unlock access to credit that also allows him then either increase his farm or increase his productivity, or better still both. So the impact of market is, taken from, it's that pull factor that then allows additional investments both by the farmer but also other people to create access and allow him to increase that productivity that we so much desire. Now, what we've also seen, in this work that we've done at AFEX over the last 10 years is that, three things need to be solved for simultaneously. Unfortunately, most of the time when we design solutions, we focus on one of these three. So the first is markets. There has to be a market where the farmer will sell. When you also organize and increase production at scale, and you don't solve for markets, you have price gluts. And then the prices tank. And we see that in almost every crop value chain, and the farmers move to another crop, and that cyclicality repeats itself. So first is markets. The second is the infrastructure. Where does it store? If Africa could solve for post-harvest storage, we would have 1 month more of food that will not import. That is about $4 billion less in food import bill for the continent. So we have to solve for storage. If you also don't have storage at the farm gates, at secondary storage level, then every farmer has to take his product to the market rather than take it 2 streets away, 10 kilometers away, drop it, and then be part of a formal organized market. The third is capital. So how can we solve for financing? The right financing at the right time, at the right tenor for these farmers. Now, most of the time we take each of these solutions, but what we've seen is you have a systemic change. You each actually get to that food systems transformation when you can provide solutions for these three simultaneously at every farm door.
Very good.
That's what we try to do at AFEX.
I like how you say that's what we try to do. I think you're doing way more. You're being a bit modest. Mr. Ayodeji is Group CEO, AFEX. I wanted to come back to another question, but I will come back to it, and it's the question of sustainability. Because part of the challenges that we have is that everything goes up, goes down, and the question of sustainability is that we need to be able to create that from the smallholder farmer to everyone in the chain. So I will come back to that. But let me move to Mr. John Ellenberger.
Thank you.
Very good to see you, sir.
Thank you.
In terms of fostering entrepreneurship and driving innovation, I know that's something that you're definitely passionate about when it comes to Land O'Lakes. My question is, what's your approach towards entrepreneurship and innovation?
Thank you. Land O'Lakes Venture 37 is something of a unique player in the development space. We're an agriculture-focused nonprofit that is appended to a $20 billion farmer-owned cooperative in the United States. The aim of our organization, a couple of the key aims of our organization called Venture 37, are to inspire and drive more competitive markets and also, relatedly, more resilient systems in agriculture. I think both of those ideas are linked, and they're also relevant to the concepts of the deal room. In nearly all of our programmatic work, we work to catalyze investments in private sector-led and government-enabled opportunities. Doing so is a unique challenge. It requires that we have at least a minimal understanding of our private sector partners. What are their ambitions? What are their challenges or limitations? What are their capacities for reaching their goals? We think a lot about the concept of return on investment and do it from a number of different perspectives, not just a financial one as it might relate to an organization, but a more holistic evaluation of return on investment. And lastly, and importantly, when we're talking about government-enabled, we have to have a clear understanding of the host government's position on inbound investment and their posture towards supporting innovation and growth.
Very good. Thank you. If I may stay with you a little.
Sure.
I'm sure in the audience we have people who would like to hear, if you can, more specifically, what specific projects or programs or initiatives and key partnerships that you are implementing to encourage this growth as an opportunity to establish collaboration.
Happy to. I think one great example of what I'm talking about is an initiative we're doing currently called Dairy Nourishes Africa, or DNA. This initiative was founded by the Global Dairy Platform a number of years back in connection with both my organization, Venture 37, and also Bain & Company. And it was really an initiative that was focused on multiple outcomes: social, nutrition, economic, as well as environmental improvements that can be delivered through transformation of the African dairy sector. DNA is a good example of a working example of an initiative you're probably hearing about this week called Pathways to Dairy Net Zero, and is operating in DNA is operating in Tanzania right now in a locally led private sector, private-public collaboration, working with the Tanzania Ag Development Bank to invest in new models for improved availability of affordable dairy products from commercially minded medium and larger scale processors. There's another program that's happening concurrently in Tanzania that's looking to incubate and advance a pipeline of micro and smaller dairy supporting businesses, including ones, importantly, that are owned and led by women and youth as they pursue their growth ambitions. The DNA initiatives so far have shown some terrific results in 4 key areas. One is increasing consumer demand for dairy products, which helps to address the nutritional challenge. Growth in processor sales to ensure that the farmer-aligned processors are realizing the benefits. Importantly, rising farmer production and farmer incomes. And lastly, through increased production, a lowered rate of greenhouse gas emission intensity that's significant to the climate.
Thank you so much for the detail. Thank you. We appreciate that. Coming back to Mr. Brent Malahi. As Chief Strategy Officer at Equity Group, we're curious to know how has your strategy evolved in this sector when it comes to achieving the goal of doubling the number of businesses in the food systems, especially when it talks about access to capital and financial services, and that's the field that you're in.
Great, thank you for the question. So, at Equity Group, we've essentially launched a plan called the Africa Recovery and Resilience Plan. And the objective of the plan is to essentially commercialize the value chains that are currently fragmented across Africa. So when we think of financial inclusion, we think about connecting smallholder farmers to off-takers, to agro-processors, to markets across the borders through our trade missions, and attract the foreign direct investment, the skills, the technology required across these value chains. So if I can just quickly outline this plan that we have, and the invitation is really for us to partner with Land O'Lakes, with the equipment providers, the input providers, to be part of this opportunity that Africa provides. So underpinning this plan of ours is what we call the Pillar 1. It's the raw materials that Africa is well endowed with. It speaks to the agricultural, the extractive potential of Africa. And it's about improving productivity to the panelists that have mentioned around productivity, improving yields. And here at Equity Group, we are making our asset finance programs more fit for purpose to mechanize smallholder farmers. We partner with service providers that do this as a service. We appreciate smallholder farmers cannot own a tractor given the unproductivity that may incur with 11 months of unutilized tractors. So we look at bringing partners to improve the productivity. Importantly, for us to really transform Africa, to move the 3% closer to 7, 10, 25% over the next couple of decades, value addition is very critical. Real transformation takes place when Africa moves across the value curve. So we're looking to drive that. We're at almost a $13 billion balance sheet, and we can support manufacturers. And we would invite global manufacturers to put productive capacity in a region like East Africa where there is power infrastructure being built. One of the critical aspects as well, and my panelists mentioned access to markets. For us, value chains, it's not just about connecting domestic value chains, it's also about connecting value chains across borders. And earlier it was mentioned around the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. Our intention as Equity Group that operates across the region, we're in a position to intentionally connect customers in Tanzania to the DRC, in Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, South Sudan.
Yes.
So we do a lot of trade missions. And importantly, and last, we want to connect and to the theme of acting. We have a number of programs where we've identified a number of ecosystems. It's about being catalytic in capacitating, connecting, and financing these value chains. So maybe that's just a bit of color what Equity Group is doing in agriculture. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Brent. We have just maybe 3 or 4 minutes. I know I promised. Could you take 1 minute on the question of sustainability? Just one. So 2 things are going to happen. If you could take a minute on the question of sustainability, what are your thoughts around that? And then we'll start from the end just to hear from you, especially about opportunities. We already had there are enough problems to discuss. What are the opportunities? What are the solutions? Sustainability, then parting shots.
So it's a very broad topic. I like to look at it from a food systems dimension, which is why we're here. But, you know, we all understand and I'm sure we all agree that without the farmer being sustainable, everything collapses. So the question that we've spent a lot of time thinking on is that at what point, as a household, does that smallholder farmer reaches sustainability? Meaning it can start to grow its business. Now, our finding is that when you can get into an income of about $2,000 a year, they start to save. They start to earn above their cost. They start to earn above their cost of feeding, and then they start to save. When you get them from up to getting into about $4,000, then they start to grow the size of their farm. And that's where you start to see productivity increase. You start to see wealth being created. Now, the problem is when you are always in between or they then get there, and our interventions is about giving them 2 or 3 more bags of fertilizer, anytime there is an incident, it pushes them back into that poverty cycle, and then they have to start all over again. And the push is, how can we get more farmers into this $5,000, $10,000 income brackets that then they start to invest in the farm and grow productivity across the continent.
Very good. Thank you so much. So we shall end our panel discussion the way we began, but from the other side, just a parting shot, especially around opportunities and possibilities.
Yeah, for investors like ourselves and lenders, there is a real opportunity for the financing sector, the companies, the institutions that take time to better understand agribusinesses, how the business cycles evolve. They do require a longer holding period and, you know, additional and follow-on investments, but the opportunity is huge. We have a very large food insecurity problem. To address it, it's going to require a lot of financing and potentially a lot of returns. It does take a longer period, but I do see a good opportunity there for financials.
Thank you very much. Ms. Katerina?
Thank you. I would say the opportunity is to put smallholder farmers at the center of policy development, deciding which infrastructure to prioritize, introducing appropriate technology to the smallholder farmers. As was said earlier, in this country, 65 or 70% of farmers are smallholder farmers, and so I think that's really where the opportunity lies, both for wealth creation, job creation, and inclusive growth. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Katerina. Ms. Adesua?
Yes, and I would also say the same. How do we enable smallholder farmers to be profitable? How do we enable them to be able to improve their income? We have to identify those technology and innovation that address challenges with climate change, that addresses issues with storage, issues with the use of data that gives them ease to access credit and finance. And to do that, we have to support those businesses who are providing those solutions, because they are critical to addressing those problems to smallholder farmers in a sustainable way. So that is key for us to move forward.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah. Agribusiness is a $160 billion business on Africa. In the next 25 years, the number is going to double. There's a great opportunity to do so much good. There's also a great opportunity to make a lot of money.
That was nice and short and sweet. Yes, we have two more parting shots.
The opportunity that I see...
I think he gave you like 10 more seconds on your time.
Okay. The opportunity that I see is to expand the portfolio of investments in dairy and livestock. I mentioned earlier in my comments about the importance of thinking about ROI from many perspectives. And there are a few sectors within agriculture, I think, that can deliver the kind of impact that dairy and livestock can. It's underrepresented today, and my hope is that through this conference and going forward, it gets the kind of investment that it deserves.
Very good. Wow. First of all, please, a round of applause. This is, I think I got a fantastic panel. Mr. Brent.
The world is resetting, and post the pandemic, the world has appreciated how concentrated global manufacturing supply chains are. Ukraine-Russia war has shown how concentrated food production is. And in a world that is reshaping, resetting, there is an opportunity, there is a window of opportunity for Africa to position itself, to be on the table, to connect itself to this reshaping world. And there lies the tailwind of the abundance of opportunities that Africa provides.
Fantastic. Because you've been so gracious, there's 3 more minutes. And I'm curious, I know that when it comes to planning and agriculture, sometimes it is difficult, especially on our continent. I want to come back to Mr. Brent. There are plans and then there's changes that happen. What do you put in place to make sure that you're able to adapt? And what advice can you give for those of us who especially deal with that challenge of constantly having to re-strategize?
Ultimately, strategy is about connecting the dots. And at Equity Group, we are trying to connect the players a bit more effectively, from the smallholder farmers, the input providers, those that are looking to mechanize, add value. And adapting is about a collaborative approach. I don't think transforming the food and agricultural system, stakeholders on their own, single stakeholders, whether it's on the production side, whether it's on the value addition side, or within production, one can operate and adapt on their own. We talked about the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. A relevant Africa is an integrated and coordinated Africa. For Africa to adapt to this evolving supply chain of the world, there has to be a lot more coordination, integration between the countries. So for me, I think adapting is about collaboration, relationships, and long-term thinking in terms of the investment that is required to provide those safeguards. And also importantly, to think more holistically in a solution. improving productivity without making sure there's a market will provide challenges. We think of improving yield and output. What are we going to do with that? It's not a matter of just exporting more. At Equity Group, what we're looking to do is to value add more and sell within the continent, and to the extent that we can and we have the surpluses, export beyond the continent.
Very good. Ms. Adesu, I saw you nodding. I'll give you a minute to add to that. I'm sure you have something to add.
No, I just totally concur.
Yeah.
Being able to be strategic about how we position ourselves in this new world is key. Even the numbers are telling us that since 2020, more investment, curious investment, is coming to the sector. So we have to then position ourselves and think about the markets, think about the critical bottlenecks, think about those things that cause risk for agriculture, and those innovations that can de-risk agriculture. These are very strategic because everything is going to lie on funding. And the funding has to be affordable, the funding has to be customized, and it has to be patient. And to make that happen, most of what the panelists have said is critical, and it has to be a partnership. We have to talk to each other. We have to, work together and see where there's collaboration and alignment in the work that we're all doing in the sector.
Very good. I'm being very generous today because you're being so kind to me. Mr. John Ellenberger, please go ahead and add your contribution towards that.
In all the work that we do, adaptation is so necessary. We are a last mile partner for so many of the different initiatives around agricultural development that maintaining a flexibility which requires understanding both the goal that you're pursuing but also the partners that can help you get there. Whether you're currently working with them or whether you're evaluating them for future collaborations is incredibly important. And then I think to help make those decisions around adaptation, having the kind of fact base that you need to understand the performance of the work you're doing and to do that in as objective a way as you can. And I think throughout our history, as I'm sure with Heifer and other people that kind of do things similar to what we do, that concept is second nature to the type of work that we do on the ground.
Thank you so much. I'll take the very last minute and I'll give it to Mr. Wanjohi at the end. From an investment perspective, would you speak to mechanisms and approaches, especially when it comes to attracting funding? A very important question when it comes to the deal room.
We are on our fifth fund. We've raised 4 funds, fully deployed. And that is a critical question for us. How do we raise additional capital? I'm in the process of fundraising. So one of the mechanisms, obviously, we are looking at first loss, protections. We are looking at guarantees and BDS, or technical assistance facilities. First loss protections and guarantees, which we've worked with both instruments in raising, 2 of our previous funds, have worked fairly well. We are able to attract new investors. For our last fund, we actually recruited NSSF Uganda as one of our investors in one of our funds, which was, a big milestone for us. And those are the instruments we'll continue using. Beyond that is just looking at, what is appropriate structuring for agriculture businesses. The funds we've been managing are 10-year close-ended funds. But we are asking ourselves that question, whether that is appropriate for agriculture enterprises which need a longer holding period. So we will probably be considering a 15-year life fund or an open vehicle, just to mitigate the risks of investing in the agriculture sector.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, it is often said time can be spent or it can be invested, but I believe on an afternoon like this, with a panel like this, our time has been well invested. Kindly help me give them a warm thank you. And our panelists, you can take your seats. Thank you so much. A bigger round of applause, please. Thank you so much. And as our panel takes their seat, I would like to invite you to reflect. With all that has been said, what's the one key thing that you're taking away? I will be quiet for about a minute, allowing you to reflect. And at the end of that minute, turn to the person next to you and share with them the thing that you have picked up. So I saved the 5 minutes for that. 1 minute for your reflection and 4 minutes to just have a bit of an interaction, because we want to facilitate that and have your voice heard as well. Carry on, please. All right, 2 minutes, and then I'll pick it up and we'll get into our second panel in this afternoon. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll carry on. If you could kindly take your seats. So we'll carry on. Thank you so much, tech team. So for our next panel, the previous panel was having a representation from leading practitioners and different institutional voices. This panel is slightly different. We're going to hear from multi-stakeholders. So we're going to bring in the voices of the private sector, investors, and deal room partners. They'll be sharing their experience, and hopefully we can take a little bit from their results on previous deal room engagements, their commitments to new initiatives, and their expectations even as they continue to engage in the agribusiness deal room. Without any further ado, I would like to go ahead and have the next set of panelists. So for the discussion on finance, agro-processing, and agro-industrialization, I'd like us to have Governor of the Bank of Tanzania, Honorable Emmanuel Mpawe Tutuba. A round of applause, please. There you go. Thank you so much for your generous applause. We also have Global Director for Agriculture and Food, World Bank, Mr. Martin van Nuko. Yeah, please forgive me. But good to see you, sir. Okay, he said very close, almost. We have Deputy CEO, Rwanda Development Bank, Ms. Nelly Mukazaire. There you go. We also have Associate Vice President, Program Management Department, International Fund for Agricultural Development, I've had, Dr. Donnell Brown. Welcome, sir. Very good to see you. We have the President of METL, Mr. Mohammed Diuiji. Yes, there you are. We also have CEO Syngenta, Mr. Eric Fairwold. A round of applause, please. Fantastic. Give them a moment to connect a little. So I'm going to borrow from what we did in the previous panel. We'll start from Mr. Fairwold and swing to the other side. What is your top priority right now? What keeps you awake at night?
Well, first of all, it's great to be here at AGRF. We really, really care a lot about Africa and African farming at Syngenta. It's critically important for global food security and addressing climate change. So what keeps me up is making sure that we're doing all we can and collaborating with the right partners, governments, NGOs, other companies, to ensure that Africa feeds itself and becomes a net exporter in a very regenerative way.
Fantastic. Please.
Thank you. Good morning or good afternoon to all. Donald Brown from the International Fund for Agricultural Development. We've been a partner in Africa for about 45 years plus, and 50% of our resources get spent in Africa. If you want to know what occupies me at the moment, well, one, we need to replenish our resources so we can continue to invest in Africa. And secondly, how do we get more climate finance coming into small farmers in Africa? We focus on small farmers. They are most affected by climate change. We can talk all we want about private sector investment deals and whatever, but if we can't help small farmers and farming in Africa to adapt to climate change, this is all going to be wasted.
Thank you for that.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. So, well, as Nelly, as a Rwandan, it's what makes me stay awake is to be healthy and wealthy and really be part of the transformation of my nation. But as a member of Rwanda Development Board, it's mostly creating an enabling environment where investments can thrive across all sectors in my nation for prosperity. Thank you.
It's fantastic that it's the same goals from personal life, health and wealth, and also in your sector. We appreciate that.
Excellent question. My name is Martin van Nieuwkoop. I'm the Global Director for Agriculture and Food. Our priority at the World Bank is, how can we facilitate the financing for the food systems transformation that the world needs, particularly for Africa?
Yes, please.
Thank you very much, moderator. My name is Emmanuel Tutuba. I'm the Governor of Bank of Tanzania. Of course, first of all, I would like to thank you for having this session. And in our capacity as a financial regulator, of course, our priority is to continue monitoring and ensure the entire financial sector be more stable to facilitate provision of loans and credits to other businesses, including agriculture sector, because we understand the importance of agriculture, and by doing so means if our financial institutions will continue providing more funds, means now even the economy will continue to be stable. Thank you very much.
Very good. Yes, please, a round of applause if you will. And lastly?
Yeah, hi, my name is Mohammed Duji. I'm president of METL Group. METL Group has got interests in a lot of manufacturing, agro-processing, agri. What keeps me awake is food sovereignty, food security connects to unemployment, youth unemployment. That's what keeps me awake.
Thank you, and I see lots of heads nodding, so we're definitely in alignment. Now we'll take a couple of questions, and all of this is around the subject of finance, agro-processing, and agro-industrialization. Let me start, if I may, with our governor of the Bank of Tanzania. It's evident that this particular space plays a vital role, and I think you've spoken to the importance of it in Tanzania's economic growth and food security. Could you share the Bank of Tanzania's strategies and initiatives towards financing and promoting these priorities?
Thank you very much, moderator, for the good question, which actually goes together with the theme that you have seen in this AGRF session, which advocates for recover, regenerate, and act. You know, the moment you have put this theme, I was trying to brainstorm myself. It aligns with our core functions. You know, as a central bank, normally we stand for monetary policy, whereby we promote financial sector stability and ensure the entire sector be more resilient, at the same time be to some extent stable to provide funds to other financial institutions. So I was trying to look on this area. For example, for us as Tanzania, we understand that our arable land, which is suitable for agriculture, is around 80% of the entire total land coverage, but still only 44% of the entire land has been utilized, and they have been looking on various areas where different institutions are looking for financing to just see the way they can maybe continue cultivating land. So there are various initiatives where the central bank and the other institutions took initiatives just to provide resources or financial resources, especially to different agricultural practitioners. And here we are talking of the central banks ourselves, where in last year we decided to create a monetary policy instrument to attract commercial banks that will have more liquidity to support agriculture. And our aim was to lower the interest rates. So we lowered the statutory minimum reserves to around 6% and encouraging all the commercial banks that will come up with specific products which will enable agricultural practitioners to access the loan that and provide loans to the interest of at least 9%, because we are talking over the single digit, means less than 10%. That will also minimize the SMR. And we have seen all the banks complied, and we were able to lower the statutory minimum reserve and give them space for higher liquidity that have been dished out. But I understand there are a number of programs which are also being undertaken by other practitioners. We had a program with FDB, who also provided a subsidy for farmers, and we are working very closely with the central bank. Now, you know, even for the case of inflation, for example, because as a monetary policy instruments, we are also controlling inflation. When you talk of agribusinesses, you touch on various areas, include from the cultivation place where there is a crop production, during the course of processing, even distribution up to the market level. And all the financial institutions you will see, they are now at the front line, just supporting various initiatives to all the stakeholders. So I've seen this initiative that for us as Tanzania, since we have the Tanzania Tanzania Agriculture Development Bank, Tanzania Investment Bank, and other commercial banks that have opened the window, we are glad to see that we have been supporting agriculture in different ways, and including the issue of value chain, where now we have enough raw material that can be used to process a number of items, and by doing so means we are supporting the entire sector, but at the same time supporting economic growth for Tanzania. So there are so many things to share, and I believe time is not on our side, but I really appreciate to have this opportunity, but we can even share even after this session. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. So that's from this. Please, a round of applause. A round of applause. A round of applause. So from Tanzania, let us go to Rwanda. We are all quite aware of the success that Rwanda is having in terms of attracting investment and also fostering the expansion of agro-processing and agro-industrialization. Could you speak to that? What is leading to this success? We would like to learn from you.
Thank you very much. For the few hours I've spent in this country, I've learned the word hamjambo. Thank you. Good afternoon again. So Rwanda's strategic plan for agriculture transformation, biggest aim is to transform agriculture from subsistence sector to more of really knowledge-based and creating values or chain into a way that leads to economic transformation, but also food security, nutrition security. So government of Rwanda has undertaken different initiatives that I'll break down into maybe 4 categories. The first one is creating a conducive environment in terms of investment in general. Because when you're talking of agriculture, I believe even those who spoke before us, we are in an era where we see agriculture as a driver of investment and change and transformation, not only for just putting food on the plate. So it links, first of all, creating a conducive environment in terms of investments. I will say 2 examples. Today we have a one-stop center in Rwanda Development Board, where you get every service if you're an investor in any sector. Starting from registering your business, you can register it in 8 hours maximum. And then in 8 hours, you have business registered. And
so, if I may interrupt you.
Yes.
Did you say 8?
8 hours.
Did you say hours?
Yes.
Kindly give us a moment to let that sink in. I've had a few discussions with some of the people who are in this room, and sometimes there's infrastructure challenges that do not allow for anything that says 8 hours. So a round of applause. That sounds like major progress.
Thank you.
And I'll hand it back to you.
So, and that is mainly enabled by the fact that you have every single permit, every single license you need, you get it under one-stop center. So that's one practical example that will lead also to agriculture investment when we talk of enabling agro-processing and so forth. The second one is also having rules and regulations that facilitate that. Our new investment code, for example, has facilitations that allow up to 15% preferential income tax. You can have 7 years of tax holidays if you are also in that sector. And then you can have also reduced corporate income tax up to 15% for agricultural exports. So setting up also rules, laws, regulations that enable that is also another step. The second one is now also access to finance. I'll mention 2 examples, practical ones. After COVID, we had what we called manufacture and build to recover. We are talking of recover today. It is one of the themes we have. So that manufacturing and build to recover program, all sectors are allowed to have facilitation on all tax exemptions if you have an investment of $1 million US. But for agriculture, if you have only $100,000 US of investment, you get all those benefits. Tax holidays, tax exemptions, so that because we believe in boosting agriculture and we believe that it's a key sector. The second example is also Export Growth Fund. Today we have fund that is channeled through our bank, Rwanda Development Bank, but also other commercial banks, where people in agriculture sector can have access to up to $600 million US. You have 2 years of period of grace. You get it at 8% interest rate, and you can pay over 15 years. So that has been a catalyst also into allowing, because the discussion we've been having here is about also access to finance. The third one is intentionally creating large-scale agriculture. The government has today worked with private sector to create an example of what we call Gabiro Agri Hub. This is 15,600 hectares of land that has state-of-art infrastructure, that is having irrigation system, and all that is made available to the public sector for food security and for the crop of export.
Wow.
And the link of that, the last one, is that we work also with RDB, Rwanda Development Board, but also the National Agriculture and Export Board, to ensure that you have also market. Because my colleagues mentioned that you can have the production, but if you don't have market, it's not also going to yield the results you want in terms of export revenues. So those are briefly some of the initiatives, and we'll be happy to discuss more and more as we go around with the discussion. Thank you.
Fantastic, fantastic, fantastic. I read a book that said, give honor where it's due. I think that deserves a bigger round of applause, if you will. Very good. If we may move over to the World Bank. Yes. How does the World Bank plan to promote, especially the conversation around inclusive and sustainable agribusiness development? Would you kindly share, especially when we are looking at addressing pressing challenges related to infrastructure, technology, and also access to markets? What is the strategy around that, sir?
Excellent question. And I think, agribusiness, agro-processing in Africa, we think is a huge opportunity. We have done some analytics that actually show that the estimated value added of agri-processing, so post-harvest value addition in Africa in 2030 would be around $1 trillion, driven by population growth, urbanization, and income growth. I think we've also heard, from previous speaker, that the continent actually is having a growing import bill of food. That, of course, includes processed food. So it seems like that clearly Africa is not capturing the potential and the opportunities that's there. Our vision is that, when it comes to capturing that opportunity, that access to markets and access to finance actually go hand in hand. I don't think you can actually look at those issues separately. Now, we're trying to deal with that to various kind of interventions and support. We have a kind of a menu there so that we can tailor also what is needed in according with specific country conditions. Of course, one is, and I think you've heard all those speakers talking about it as well, ensuring an enabling policy environment for the private sector that come in. Now, that sounds very abstract, but in real terms, it means, okay, looking at competition policy, is there actually space for the private sector to come in, or is that space taken up by the state-owned enterprises? The cost of doing business, for instance, the regulatory regime of input markets, it's quite difficult for the private sector to introduce new fertilizers and seeds in some of the input markets in African countries. The risk associated with making investments, so for instance, access to land, to make investments. So through our development policy, operations, and P4R's program for results, we're actually engaging with the government to ensure enabling policy environment. So that's one item on the menu. A second item is, of course, and it was also mentioned, the ensuring infrastructure and logistics. So think about agri-clusters, agri-processing zones, where government supports, the infrastructure, the water, the electricity, the transport, in return with anchor investors that commit to invest in processing capacity that actually generates value added and generates employment. One can think about those public-private compacts, that you want to move forward. Of course, many of the agribusiness in Africa are small and medium enterprises, so how can you actually tailor some interventions particularly to those? In that respect, the bank has quite some experience in we call it productive alliances, where we actually bring and I think it was also mentioned by a previous speaker, where we bring producer organizations and link them up with buyers to offtake agreements, and we provide the seed money for those agreements to work. We think, that those offtake agreements and those productive alliances are very, very attractive, because actually it resolves multiple constraints in simultaneous fashion. Smallholder farmers, small and medium enterprises, they face many, many constraints. And very often when you resolve one constraint, something else quickly becomes the binding constraint. So arrangements where you can resolve multiple solutions in simultaneous fashion can really, really generate impact. For instance, the offtake agreements provide access to markets. The offtake agreements provide access to technical assistance to farmers to produce the quality. The offtake agreements can be collateral for financing. And the offtake agreements, provide, very often the offtakers actually provide access to inputs. So those are just 3 examples. I have a few more, and I hope I have an opportunity to come back later in the conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. A round of applause, please. If I may, this one is for Mr. Mohammed, and it's going to be anchored. I'm tempted to stay in the present, but let me jump to the future, especially around the question of vision. How do you envision the evolution of agro-processing and agro-industrialization over the next decade, 10 years?
So let me start by giving you a small story. I have signed the Giving Pledge. The Giving Pledge is an initiative by Bill Gates, Melinda, and Warren Buffett for philanthropists across the world to do philanthropy. So we have conferences every year, and the time we met was the time when there was Ukraine-Russia war. And people talked about ocean, environment issues, but I was talking to them about food security. Now, let me give you a little bit of a thought. You look at Africa, the GDP of Africa is about 3.2 trillion. What is the population? 1.4 billion. If you take out the Nigerias, the Morocco, the Egypts, a little bit of a South Africa, you have an Africa where per capita income is $1,200. You're talking about $100 a month. Now, when I did a little bit more research, out of that $100, $70 is being spent on food. Now, when the war erupted, fuel prices doubled. Edible oil prices in terms of sunflower, Ukraine was a problem. Rapeseed in Canada was a problem. Palm, the Indonesians put a ban. That doubled. Grain prices because of the corridor of Black Sea doubled. So that means freights doubled. So the goods come into countries like Tanzania where you have to pay taxes. 10% on $200 does not equal to 10% on $400. So cost pile up, cost pile up, cost pile up. So the conclusion of the matter was that an average African who could buy $70 worth of food could only afford $35 worth of food. Now comes a big problem. Then you go into malnutrition and etc., etc. So I feel the vision. Look, India, Europe, a lot of Western countries have made big strides in agricultural revolution. So let's go back and think that why we, Africa, we've talked, I heard the minister talking about the arable land that we have in Africa, the young population we have. So why are we not being able to break, to become food sovereign and export to the world and feed the world? Why? Question we have to ask, right? Because we've been talking about agriculture and agro-processing for years and years. So one, I think that, and again, I love what the minister said in one of his statements, that agriculture is not politics. Yes. And I loved it because I believe a lot of African leaders are politicizing land. Now, there's a background in South Africa. Yes, there's a problem, or Rhodesia, there's a problem. But countries like Zambia, Tanzania, etc., we don't have a problem. And as much as I would like to believe smallholder farmers are very important, because I'm in the tea business, we have extension services, we give fertilizers, we give transparency in terms of pricing, etc., etc. But the conclusion of the matter is you need large investment. So I have been raising this fund of $1 billion to invest in agriculture so that we can create food surplus and avoid using our hard currency to import and further hurt our African economies.
Very good. A round of applause, please. Thank you so much, Mr. Mohamed. If I may come to Mr. Eric Fierol. I notice you gave a big thumbs up to that. First, let me ask you to share your comment, your reaction to that, and then I'll come to this question.
Well, Syngenta's goal is to bring our global capabilities in seeds, crop protection, crop nutrition, and agronomy to African farmers, to help lift up African farmers. And I want to tell you a story from the last 2 days. In my long career, 42 years, the last 2 days were among the most exciting I've ever had around lifting up smallholder farmers to be medium and larger farmers, and to see firsthand how collaboration between governments, input providers, downstream, can come together to make a huge difference. And the story I'll tell you is about Wilmar's rice milling facility in Morogoro. So I visited it Sunday for the first time. I met with Vinod Kumar, who runs the facility, and Santosh Pillai, who runs Wilmar for all of Africa. They have built a world-class rice milling facility here in Tanzania that's processing 100,000 tons per year and will ramp up to 300,000 tons per year. That's real scale. Now, their goal was to source from Tanzanian farmers, local farmers, let them scale up so that they can supply high quality, high productivity rice that they can use here locally. So we have something called MAP centers in other countries, Modern Agriculture Platform, where we bring together agronomists and product knowledge capability to serve the farmers to help lift them up. For the last 2 years, Wilmar and Syngenta have been working together, also supported by Yara for fertilizer. And yesterday we saw the smallholder farmers, hundreds of them in this area, went from 4 tons per hectare to 8 tons per hectare.
Fantastic.
By collaborating with the government for better seed, the right fertilizer, the right crop protection products, and the right agronomic advice. The better news is not only did they double their yields, but they increased the quality. So Wilmar pays more for the rice. And I saw it on the farmers' faces, their joy to be able to bring high quality, high yielding rice and get paid cash so that they can go and reinvest in their farms to grow their farms. So my point is, we have the technology, we have the capabilities. If we collaborate, governments, downstream companies, upstream companies, NGOs, and put our thinking, put our capabilities together, we can make this happen in the next few years. Africa can feed itself and become an exporter.
Big round of applause. Thank you. I do notice that my question to you was going to be about scaling, because it's definitely a passion that you have. Perhaps maybe we could stay there a little bit. What would make the submission that you've given, what would take it to the next level? What would be the cherry on top of all that? On top of all that, the positive and the progress that's happening?
I think what we see a lot of, and I've been watching this for many, many years, and we've been trying many things, is that we often bring a piece of the solution. So a new digital tool, a new seed, agronomic advice. We bring pieces of the tool to farmers, but not solutions. When we bring, it just dawned on me yesterday that when we bring the full solution to farmers, and you can only do that by collaborating. No company has all the capability. But when you collaborate and you bring the right tools together and you go to the farmer with, here are the seeds you should use. Here's the crop nutrition you should use. Here's the protocols. And we'll follow with you in case there are problems. Then the magic happens. And it doesn't take new technologies 5 years from now. I mean, of course, better infrastructure, better trade rules. There are things we can do to enhance it, but we can do it today. So it's about taking examples like what Wilmar's doing and doing it more, scaling it up now, scaling it rapidly.
Mr. Martin, I noticed you could agree extensively. Would you share your thoughts on that? I noticed you were agreeing very vigorously. What's your thought on that? Yes. Oh, sorry, you can't quite. My question is, I did notice from your body language that you are really agreeing with what Mr. Fairwald was saying. Would you want to add to that?
No, what I heard was basically confirming what I said earlier about the nature of productive alliances.
Yes.
I mean, smallholder farmers face multiple constraints. Very often what we do is, okay, what's the priority? We do priority setting and then we come in with one single solution to one of those constraints. So when you have arrangements that actually resolve multiple constraints simultaneously, that is getting the impact. And I think that was a great example. Yeah.
Very good. Thank you so much. I come to Dr. Donnell now, if you will. What's the vision that is there when it comes to the role in providing financial support and technical assistance to especially the smallholder farmers? What does that look like when you're thinking about rural entrepreneurs, and what innovative strategies or projects are you currently engaged in that support that purpose?
Thanks. So at EFAB, we very much focus solely on smallholder farmers and small rural entrepreneurs. And I don't think the debate should be, is it big or is it small? It's both. Africa, whether we like it or not, most farmers are smallholder farmers. Africa's development, socio-economic, will be dependent on smallholder farmers, rural communities. But it also needs those big commercial investors as well. I think the real sweet spot is when you can integrate those two models and bring them closer together. So when you can use large commercial farmers to support smaller farmers to aggregate to increase thing there. So we focus on the smaller ones, not just to benefit, but also to drive economic development in this side of things. And we've got about 45 years experience as our sole purpose is investing in rural areas and rural side of things. So kind of what does it look like? So I would say primarily we're an investor, but if you're looking at smallholders and small rural enterprises, as we heard from Martin, it's much, much more than just money. Often they don't have the capabilities, they don't have some of the technologies, but smallholder farmers need to get organized. So yes, we invest in the markets, we invest in the value chains that can really include smallholders into that process, be it production, processing, but it's also about being a partner rather than just an investor. So how do you actually strengthen the organizations? How do you strengthen their capabilities? How do you bring them to the table? So the other side of what we do, which is the softer side, is, for example, helping them to build the organizations. We have a Farmers Forum initiative. So genuinely listening to the small farmers, because there are many, many areas to invest in, but there's often a key one which is constraining the smallholders. And it may well be in one area, it may be access to finance, it may be something else somewhere else. So having that sort of a lens, I think, is really important, and to get them at the table. And for EFAD, the majority of our investments are through and with governments. But we can now invest directly with the private sector as a complementary set of investments. And that's a real area of expansion for us, because there's a lot we can do with governments, but there's a lot we can do directly with the private sector. And we tend to try and take a niche of those really small rural financial services, rural aggregators, processors that we've probably been working with our projects, but they're not getting the investment from the sector to expand. So we look in there and we try and get them bigger and better and take those risks so that they then do become much more attractive to commercial banks. And that's something we're going to do more and more as we move forward. And maybe lastly, coming back to the issue that I said at the beginning, climate change is here and now, and it's really affecting smallholders. I mean, I was just out at Lake Victoria in the last few days. You go to Mwanza, you look how dry it is. The rains have really, I wouldn't say failed, but they haven't really delivered there. I was looking at just these miles and miles of dry paddy fields, which are reliant on rain-fed agriculture, and yet you've got Lake Victoria sitting right next to you. You know, it just seems incredible that we've got a whole system reliant on rain-fed agriculture that we know is more and more unreliable, yet we're not got the irrigation and the access to those to really get things going. So that's the sort of thing. We also need to think about climate in these investments.
Very good. I'd like to just a moment, please. Ms. Nelly, I noticed you were nodding when it came to systems and processes in terms of we have a lake, but we are dealing with this. It doesn't seem to make sense. What do you find is the situation that leads to that kind of, we have a lake, we could be solving big problems when it comes to irrigation, but somehow we are not. What is the impediment in the between there? Oh, sorry, may not be hearing me well. So my question is, yes, please. Oh, you didn't. So I should have said the full name, Ms. Nelly
Mukazere. Okay.
Yes,
No,
I apologize.
Well, I would think it echoes what other speakers have said, is to sit and do an integrated model and really look at the solutions in a combined effort. And I will speak again of a practical example. When government with private sector, we started the Gabiro Agribusiness Hub. That was one of a way of trying to see how about we make sure we have the right infrastructure, irrigation system is working. It requires government participation, but also private sector. We look at the seeds. We work with companies that are going to bring the right seed, as the other speaker mentioned, seeds that are going to give the right yield, the quality, but also quantity. Because if you're speaking of food security plus exportation, you also need numbers. You need quantity. How do we make sure that we incentivize people who are going to do that? Investors you're attracting, but also access to finance to growers, because you don't want also to make it accessible to only external investment. You want the farmers, the people who own those lands, who are in that place, to be the first beneficiaries. So I think why would it not work is that sometimes we approach it in silos. You do one thing, you lack the combination, and then it will fail, because every step feeds in the other one at the end of the day. So honestly, if there's no combination of that political will involving the farmers, the people who are beneficiaries, enable them to do, but also think of the bigger impact. Who do you need? What technology? What investment? We are seeing that it's working when you look at it in an integrated way. It doesn't take decades, as the other speaker mentioned. 1 year, 2 years, you can see the change.
Thank you. Mr. Eric?
Yeah, so it's very important that the governments work with private enterprise to put in better irrigation systems across Africa. But we shouldn't just rely on irrigation. Regenerative agriculture practices, and we were with another partner, to quick story this morning, Ag Venture in Kenya, who farms about 35,000 hectares with their partners. They practice regenerative agriculture, and they have for a number of years. No-till, crop rotations, and other practices to leave the soil healthy soils. So even in drought years, which have been very bad in Kenya in the last few years, their farms have gotten much higher yields than adjacent farms not using regenerative practices. So let's support farmers to not only get access to irrigation, but also to use regenerative practices to get better yields today under drought conditions, because drought is happening more and more across Africa and across the world.
Thank you. So we have 2 minutes. I'd like to give 1 minute to Mr. Mohammed and 1 minute to our governor.
To talk about agro-processing, but just on the agri side, you know, if we need to have good framework agreements. Today, you look at an example of sugar in Africa. Sugar in Africa is prospered. Sugar in Tanzania is prospered. Why? Because when to import sugar is controlled, how much to import is controlled. After that, there's crazy amount of taxes. So basically, sugar is like drugs, doing drugs business. You can't bring it in. So if today someone is going to go and invest $1 billion and say, I'm going to replace 5 million tons of wheat, today the duty on wheat is 10%. They say, so it's a chicken and egg situation. So you come to 200,000 tons, I will increase to 20%. You come to 500,000 tons, I'll increase to 25%. So there has to be a framework agreement. And one more point, sorry. Without agro-processing, agri is meaningless. Now I want to ask one question. Today this country produces cotton, and we are probably the third largest cotton producers. How come we only have 3 textile mills? So what is happening? We are ginning the cotton. The cotton is going to China. They spin, they weave, they mercerize, they dye, they print, they knit the garment. They send it back to us. There are crazy taxes here protecting us, yet we cannot compete. So it's a paradox. So unless and when the policies are not going to be set correct on the agro-processing side, we'll continue to talk about cocoa and Ghana and chocolates and Switzerland and what our farmers are getting, etc., etc.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mohamed. And lastly, thank you, yes. And lastly, Honorable Emmanuel Mpawe, what would be your parting shot, sir?
Thank you very, very much, moderator. I really appreciate that in general I'm looking agriculture sector as a profitable sector. And now for us as financial institutions, including others at different levels, I believe what is needed is to have in place a bankable projects that will be submitted to these financial institutions, get more resources, and provided that the entire sector is profitable, I believe they'll get more resources and continue to implement their interventions and enable our economy to grow. Thank you very much.
Very good. A big round of applause for our panelists. I'd invite them to take their seats. Thank you so much for your contribution. It means a lot. A bigger round of applause, I think. Yes, thank you so much. In case you came in the middle there and you were wondering exactly what the subject was, well, we've been listening to our multi-stakeholder panel, and we're looking at how we bring the voice of private sector investors and deal room partners into this conversation. And we've had quite a bit of their experience, and I must note that it was heavy on passion, and we know that Africa is in good hands with people like this. I must say it is a beautiful thing to see you exchanging cards. Fantastic. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. And now we'd like to invite for our closing remarks Deputy Administrator, United States Agency for International Development. And when I say her name, kindly give a big round of applause, Miss Isobel Coleman. Keep the applause coming.